Hello and welcome to today's webinar, A Brighter Energy Future for Regions, an Introduction to SolSmart's Regional Organization Pathway. I'm Brett Schwartz, an Associate Director at the NADO Research Foundation, and we're so happy to be bringing you this webinar in partnership with our colleagues at NARC, the National Association of Regional Councils. The NADO Research Foundation and NARC have recently joined the National SolSmart team to promote the benefits and resources available to communities and regions through SolSmart's solar energy technical assistance and designation process. Now, the SolSmart team works free of charge with communities and regions across the country to obtain gold, silver, and bronze designations by incorporating best practices for solar planning, zoning, permitting, and inspection. Now, of particular interest to today's audience should be SolSmart's regional organization pathway that recognizes organizations facilitating progress across jurisdictions to assist multiple municipalities and counties as they advance solar energy growth. Now, the SolSmart is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, and the technical assistance effort is overseen by the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, IREC, who you'll hear from more today, and the designation program is administered by ICMA. So on today's webinar, you'll learn more about the basics of SolSmart, how the regional pathway works, and hear firsthand from a regional development organization that has achieved designation for their work. So we've got a lot of great information coming your way in just a bit, but before we get started, I just want to share a few quick items. So as I mentioned earlier, today's webinar is co-sponsored by the NADO Research Foundation and NARC. Both our organizations work to support regional development organizations all across the country in a variety of ways, especially in the areas of planning, economic development, transportation, and resilience. Now, I know we have a mix of both NADO and NARC members on the call today, and really want to encourage you to reach out to contacts at your respective organizations to learn more about the SolSmart program afterwards if you are interested. So at the NADO Research Foundation, the contact is me and my colleague, Kira Ristig. And at NARC, the contact is Jess Routson, so feel free to reach out to any of us afterwards. Following the webinar, there'll also be a quick survey that'll pop up on the screen, and that'll be a chance for you to also note your interest in having someone reach out to you to learn more about the program. So just a few quick logistics. Again, thanks so much for being here with us today. If you do have any questions or comments, feel free to use the questions box, which is located on the right side of the screen in a drop-down menu, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can at the end of the presentations. And always the number one question is about, will this webinar be recorded and the slides made available? Absolutely. You should have these on a variety of sites in the next few days, NADO, NARC, and SolSmart, both the recording and the PowerPoint presentations. Once again, just a reminder to provide some feedback on that post-webinar survey to be able to share some information about what your needs and interests are and some of the work that you already have underway in your regions. So with that, we've got a phenomenal lineup of speakers today who will really be able to share more information about SolSmart, both in theory and in practice. And so first, we'll hear from Danny Falk and Andrew Light, both program managers at the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. They'll provide an overview of the program, talk more about the regional pathway, the designation structure, and really the benefits of participating in SolSmart. And following Danny and Andrew, we'll hear from Kevin Bird and Afi Fankin from the New River Valley Regional Commission, located in Southwest Virginia. Kevin is New River Valley's Executive Director and also currently serves as NATO's President, and Afi is the organization's Senior Planner. They will share more about New River Valley's experience in receiving a bronze designation through the regional pathway. They'll talk about the process, the benefit it's brought to the region and local communities, and also what steps are underway right now to kind of keep the momentum going moving forward. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to turn things over to Danny to kick things off. And thanks again to everyone for joining us today.
Thanks, Brett, for that great introduction, and we're very excited to be working with NADO and NARC as partners. And thank you to all of our attendees who took time out of their schedule today to listen to this great webinar. Hopefully, great webinar we put together. And with that, we'll get started in talking a little bit about the regional organization pathway and a few details about it. But again, as Brett said, my name is Daniel Falk or Danny Falk, go by either. I'm a program manager with the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, abbreviated IREC, as mentioned here. And again, as Brett mentioned, if you have any questions about the SolSmart program in general, whether it has to do with the regional organization pathway or anything that comes up or any questions about the program in general, we're always happy to help at IREC on anything that you have any questions about. So with that, we'll get into the presentation a little bit, but just a quick disclaimer before we get started. The program essentially is administered through the DOE's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, EERE. And essentially what this says here, I won't go into all the details, but essentially this presentation is made on behalf of the U.S. government, but essentially the U.S. government does not necessarily state or reflect the views of this webinar specifically. So with that, we can get into a little bit of the content on what SolSmart is and what the program offers and all the great details on it, which we're happy to expand into. So basically, the high-level view of SolSmart is that it is a program that operates around designation and technical assistance and allows governments to make it easier, specifically local governments, to make it easier and more affordable for residents and businesses to go solar. And essentially what we do, and we'll get into a little bit more details, is provide a designation for communities that put best practices in place that show that they're open to solar business and have taken steps to address local barriers. And on that route toward designation, we provide targeted no-cost technical assistance to reduce those soft costs and move toward SolSmart designation in general. So there's multiple ways that we do that, and there's multiple routes on the SolSmart journey toward designation that we help communities with. But in our case, in different cases, we have certain set goals and ways we do that. So those are, for example, increasing transparency. So this could be something as simple as just posting a solar landing page online, which details all the elements of solar a community would be interested in. Or in this case, a regional organization that would be helping with the community could post a solar landing page that has resources on everything related to SolSmart or everything related to solar issues within a community, collaborating with local departments, creating a regional inspection checklist. And those are just a couple of the examples. We also strive to increase understanding on solar issues. So we do that in multiple ways, but one of the ways is providing training on solar PV in staff that are working in permitting so that they have information on best practices that they can implement. We also provide guidance on planning and zoning best practices for solar PV, again, in a similar vein to permitting best practices and training for that. And then the last thing that we're really focused on is reducing the barriers to solar, as mentioned before. And we do that through offering a procedure for recording solar easements for property owners, and also coordinating with member communities to engage utilities, which is a big part of the regional organization experience in the SolSmart program, which I'll get a little bit more into. So the role of regional organizations. So within the SolSmart program, there's a lot of benefits to regional organizations being involved in the program and really helping communities get on board. So regional organizations can be responsible for building a cohesive plan for the entire region. This is a way to get local communities really involved and really knowledgeable across the board. In our experience, the regional organizations have been a huge help in providing solar within the regions that they have jurisdiction over or work in. So we view regional organizations as an essential part of the SolSmart program. And one of the reasons for that is that there's a local perspective on best practices. And we see regional organizations as a way to really be able to provide that local perspective with communities and be able to work with the community-specific issues on the SolSmart, on solar issues, and within some of the ways that we work in the SolSmart program. Regional organizations also have the advantage of providing a platform for communities within the region to share ideas or problems that they may have on solar-related issues. And it also provides economies of scale in terms of training sessions, engaging with utilities and community. This is pretty straightforward. It's just easier for one organization to be able to help a lot of communities that may not have the manpower or the time to be able to put on some of those trainings and things like that. So those are obviously some of the examples of how regional organizations can help local communities in the SolSmart program, but there are also benefits of SolSmart to regional organizations as well. And we kind of split this up into three different categories. And my colleague Andrew Light will be talking after me. We'll go into more detail on this, but on a high level view, we view the three benefits as designation, which can be provided to regional organizations, which is just a way to show that regional organizations have done a lot of great work to be able to put best practices in place for local communities and to work with those local communities and to show that they are committed to the solar best practices within the region, which is obviously something that's pretty beneficial and important for regional organizations to promote as sort of a feather in the cap and show the great work that they do throughout the program. Another great benefit of SolSmart to regional organizations is the technical assistance aspect. So technical assistance essentially is one of the core elements of our program. So we provide it to regional organizations and also the communities as a way to put those best practices in place. So this gets essentially all groups up to date with some of the best practices in place, which obviously can help with solar development, which in turn, increases jobs within a region and also decreases some of what we would call, I guess, the unnecessary costs of solar. And one of the other benefits that we see is the development of regional resources on solar. So these are, just having the best practices in things like permitting or zoning and planning or engagement with utilities. All those things make it easier for regional organizations to be able to interact with those different groups in a beneficial way. So those are just a couple of the examples of some of the benefits of SolSmart to regional organizations and ways that we see benefits. So we're going to get into a little bit more of the, I guess we'll call it the meat and potatoes of the SolSmart program and how it works and some of the elements of it. So we have three different designation pathways. Again, designation being the end goal that we're looking for in the program. Those three pathways are the standard pathway, the modified pathway, and the regional organization pathway. For a little bit of background, the standard pathway is usually the route that local communities, so cities, towns, villages, townships, those organizations usually go down the standard pathway. It's just that there are obviously certain things that regional organizations do that don't fit in with the standard pathway just because the different jurisdictions involved. So the standard pathway is usually our route for local communities, and then the modified pathway is just for certain counties and organizations that don't have control over planning and zoning processes or permitting processes. They usually go down that route. And then our relevant route here is the regional organization pathway. And this is the way that all regional organizations usually aim for designation with our program. And this pathway involves a lot more of working with local communities and getting the best solar practices in place. So those are the main differences between the pathways to know. So a little bit more about the pathways and some of the information on how our program works. We have essentially a listing of best practices in place that are represented by credits. So we have credits across a lot of different categories: planning and zoning and development, solar rights, utility engagement, community engagement, market development, finance, and all of these credits are used to build the route toward designation. So they represent essentially what we see as the best practices in solar. So things like having a solar landing page where all that information is easily available. Things like having updated practices for staff on planning and zoning or permitting. Working with local stakeholders within the region that may be knowledgeable on solar issues, things like that. And all of these credits build the unique route that local governments or regional organizations can take toward designation. So that's just a little bit more information on where the best practices become our individual credits, and then eventually the individual credits become SolSmart designation. So we have 3 different levels of designation within the program. This is the same for all the different routes, and different levels of community. So whether you're, a regional organization, or if you're working with a community, they will be aiming toward one of these 3 designation levels. The first designation level being our bronze level, which basically revolves around completing 5 prerequisites and then earning 50 total points. As mentioned in the previous slide, points in general are worth between 5 and 20 points. So just building a unique path to get to that 50 points. And then that's usually our first step, is aiming towards SolSmart Bronze. And then after that, if a regional organization is really interested, we have the silver and gold designations. So these are essentially achieving the previous designations and then completing 1 additional prerequisite, and then of course reaching the point thresholds you can see here. So 80 points for silver and 110 points for gold. Now, a little bit more about the SolSmart process and how we work is available on this slide. So you can see we've got 8 different steps here. These steps are similar whether you're a regional organization or a county or a village or a city. They're very similar in terms of how we go step by step toward a designation. So on the first step, usually there's some kind of expression of interest in an initial discussion. So it may be that someone within your regional organization hears about, for example, this program through this webinar, and reaches out and maybe says, "Oh, I'm really interested in this program. It sounds like it's really beneficial and really segues with what we're looking for." Or it may be that we on the SolSmart end reach out to a community, a regional organization, and say, "Hey, we saw in the news that you guys are working with this new solar project, so we thought this might be of interest to you guys, or we heard about you guys from this webinar you attended, and one of the participants there, attendees, said that you might be interested in this." So that's usually our first step in kind of expressing initial interest and getting our second step on the board, which is a consultation call. And that's where we really talk about the individual steps. What are the prerequisites? Are you thinking bronze, silver, or gold for designation? What have you guys already done, sort of thing, that we can promote and really show you guys and show off your great work already through a potential designation, or at least get you the points on the way there, and kind of really getting down into the nitty-gritty of where a community or regional organization is at, where they are going, and how we can provide that assistance to them. The next step is usually after the consultation call, there's a discussion between the SolSmart team and a regional organization, and there's kind of a additional, like, yeah, we heard the consultation call, we were on there, and we think this segues based on that information. And that usually leads to our first prerequisite, which is a solar statement. And this is just essentially a pretty basic document that says that in a regional organization, in this case, is interested in pursuing designation, and maybe a little bit of information on how that process would go. And after that point, we on the SolSmart team do an assessment of a regional organization's website or other things that a regional organization has done on the solar side, and how that fits with the credits and the points and where they're at on their process, as well as kind of some of the things that regional organization might be aiming to do or might be able to easily do to get toward designation. And then after that point, we start really providing the core elements of the program. So the technical assistance, where we get into it and we say, "Hey, here's we're going to provide you assistance on it. We're going to help, have training sessions, or be able to organize with a regional organization training sessions. We're going to send some resources over that you might want to look at for your website," that sort of thing. And then again, a pathway toward bronze and silver comes out based on that technical assistance. And eventually, once all those credits and prerequisites are achieved, then a regional organization can send that information over and we review it. And if everything looks good, then we go toward, then we award that designation to a community. And that's basically the outline of the process, or the 8 steps of the process. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in a bit on some of these elements. But before then, a little bit of information about the SolSmart program and what we've done thus far and who we've worked with. Right now, we have 408 designees across a ton of different cities, villages, towns, counties, regional organizations, and those are across 41 states, as well as the District of Columbia, hoping to get that up to 50 relatively soon. We also have about 101 million people that are within designated communities or regional organizations or counties across the country. And we also have 9 designated regional organizations thus far. In terms of our impact and the way that SolSmart actually directly leads to increased solar development, or can really make that difference in increasing solar development within jurisdiction, because that's obviously what our goal is at the end of the day. We found that through a third-party analysis that SolSmart increases a community's installed capacity by about 67%, or 69 kilowatts per month, and the number of solar installations usually increases by about 62%, or 3 systems a month on average in a community. So we're really excited about that impact that we've been able to have on designated communities, and we're really excited that we've been able to see that impact and have that tangible impact within communities that we can observe. And we've also had an additional 25 megawatts per month of installed capacity and over 1,000 installations per month in designated communities. So we're really excited to be able to see that we're having that really strong on-the-ground impact for communities, and really able to say, yes, SolSmart designation is going to help you. Really, these best practices in place are going to lead to more solar development within communities. And a little bit of information about our program and the great organizations we work with, including obviously 2 great organizations that are putting this webinar together. But we've got essentially 2 different sides of the program. There's the technical assistance side, which IREC is a part of, as well as the NADO Research Foundation and NARC. You can see a couple other organizations there that provide technical assistance or help with the onboarding process. And then we have a designation program administrator. So those are the folks that usually will review, a designation that, or a community that submits information. They work on the designation side and that sort of thing. So a little bit of information about the prerequisites that I mentioned earlier for the designation levels. We've got 7 of them right here. I won't go into too much detail on them, but just so everyone has them available, these are a couple of them that are in place. So you've got solar statement on PR1, you've got guidance on solar planning and zoning with communities and counties within the region. You've got collaborating with local inspection departments, hosting regional trainings on solar permitting, a solar landing page, as mentioned before, having quantifiable metrics for solar PV development in region-wide plans, and then having a certain threshold of SolSmart designated communities within a region. So those are a pretty quick run through of those 7 prerequisites that make up the prerequisites on the way to gold. And again, the meat and potatoes of the program definitely around technical assistance, which we provide. So we work with officials within regional organizations, elected officials, local government staff, community members, again, to put these best practices in solar in place. This is all funded by the SolSmart program in general. There's no cost to communities. Regional organizations and communities only have to worry about the staff time, which obviously can be an issue sometimes, and we're working to do everything possible to decrease that amount of time, but that would be the only thing worth mentioning on that end. And regional organizations and communities, obviously, the goal is to move toward designation. So that's kind of what we always have in mind. In order to get there, we always provide technical assistance, whether it's online or by phone or in person. Although in person, not as much, obviously, lately under the conditions. So a little bit more about the submission process, which is the last step in the process. We're always obviously involved with the process, so communities and regional organizations don't have to worry about, going in alone. So there's always, back and forth on credits and what needs to be done for the credits and whether we think they'll apply for designation, whether they're there yet. But we essentially work to make sure that these credits are in place toward a bronze designation. And that includes getting documentation together on things like, links to a website, memos that are, sometimes signed by regional organization officials, and sometimes policy documents as well. And then once that's all together, we essentially submit that information through SolSmart's online process, and then hopefully everything comes together and we have a designation together that we can promote as a team. And to this end, we've got a lot of great resources that we put together on solar energy topics, including a great toolkit for local governments in terms of solar energy, as well as other resources on some of our different categories that we have. And that's all available on our website, and you can find it through the links here. And in addition to those great resources, we also have put together a list of webinars on some of our great topics, or really important topics in the solar field. So you've got things like, again, best practices in solar planning and zoning, and then again for best practices specifically for large-scale solar, things like best practices for solar PV inspection, how to develop a solarized campaign, which is obviously a huge interest across the region, for, that lots of opportunities for collaboration between communities as well as for regional organizations to help with that campaign. And then other solar related topics. So things like solar on brownfields or solar and electric vehicle best practices. So these are just a couple of the webinars we have available. If you have time, feel free to check out our website and check out some of those webinars that are in place. I think they're a fantastic resource and definitely worth checking out if you have some spare time. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Andrew Light, who will go into a little bit more information on some of the benefits of SolSmart to regional organizations in a little bit more detail. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. I'm going to reiterate a few things that Danny's kind of mentioned throughout this presentation, but I want to do so kind of through the lens of, or with a focus on underserved communities. I want to kind of go through the ask that we have of regional organizations from the SolSmart perspective, and why we think regional organizations are so important to the success of this program and to the success of the energy transition nationally. So as Danny mentioned earlier, we had an independent evaluation a little bit ago that kind of took a look at our program as a whole, the results of it, and what we're doing, and made recommendations for improvement and where we can improve. So that evaluation was led by 4 universities: Missouri University of Science and Technology, Florida State University, University of Miami, and the University of Texas at Austin. So as Danny mentioned, there's kind of a physical benefit here where the program has increased solar capacity just generally. The number of installations have increased by 62%. And then SolSmart has additionally led to approximately 300 to 450 megawatts of additional solar capacity. There's an aspect of that that's a really great feature and benefit of SolSmart that doesn't necessarily take a look at kind of the nuance of it, of where those installations are coming from, or where they're occurring. Our concern is that underserved communities are not benefiting as much from SolSmart program as possibly the wealthier communities are. So we can go to the next slide. So some of these key findings, again, you're getting the solar costs, or the soft costs of solar are being reduced. So speeds up the permitting process by 7.5 days on average. Generally increasing local knowledge about solar energy, which is a really big perk. For a $10 million grant from DOE, there's a $1 to $2 billion additional solar investment, which is a massive return on investment. There is a positive impact on the permitting process. We're not so sure that it's overall speeding up the installation process, but we're working on that as well. So next, we're going to kind of go through how we're moving forward with all this information that we now have from this independent evaluation. I'm actually going to skip to the bottom two first, because I think these are two that are kind of generally for our program as a whole. We want to improve the SolSmart criteria that Danny kind of went through in terms of those prereqs and the credits that you can earn as a community or regional organization. And we want to make those as efficient and as effective as possible. The other side, as we mentioned earlier, was the inspection times, and we want to make sure that the installation process speeds up over time as well, and that we're holding communities to that standard. The part I really want to focus on for the next few minutes, though, is the under-resourced communities that we work with and we want to work with. So some of the possible barriers that communities face, we'll kind of go into in a second, but one of the big ones is communities just simply don't know about our program, which is a no-cost program that can help them with some really important aspects of local government. So we're increasing outreaches generally to encourage new communities, but we're particularly focusing on under-resourced communities, or the ones that have difficulty meeting staff needs. So kind of as the outcome of that is that we're working to ensure that SolSmart encourages equitable outcomes and improves access to solar for all populations, underserved, under-resourced, historically disadvantaged, all those communities. We really want to make sure that they have an opportunity to at least know about SolSmart, have the opportunity to participate, and to see the benefits of reducing solar soft costs. Can move on to the next one. So as that first bullet point was increasing outreach. In the past few months, we've really expanded our outreach efforts with the help of a few subrecipients on our grant, but also internally as well. As that's happened, we've really focused on under-resourced communities and underserved communities across the country. One of the major responses we always receive is that they would love to participate. It's a really important issue for the community, but they just simply lack the capacity at the moment. That capacity could be time. You just don't have enough man hours. You might not have the resources to do things like hold trainings or bring your community together to discuss solar or community solar. Might not have the staff available. A lot of local governments, particularly in the underserved, are just a few people working full time to maintain this community. And you might not have the expertise at the end of the day. I think zoning and planning is a particularly complicated issue. Permitting, inspection, these are all things that as energy develops over time is a rapidly changing field. And expertise is difficult to come by at times. The reason we're bringing all this up is because with the evaluation and with these kind of results of our outreach efforts, we really feel that regional organizations are key to bridging the gap so that all communities have an equitable opportunity to participate in this clean energy transition that's happening nationwide. I think this is a really key aspect of the regional organization pathway, is that SolSmart can provide a lot of benefits to the regional organization, but the regional organization can provide a lot of benefits to communities that might not get to participate in a really important aspect of energy. These communities have an opportunity to have a voice in their energy production and energy standards that they might be missing out on because they just don't have the capacity at the moment. So go to the next one. And then, so as Danny mentioned earlier, there's kind of these general benefits that we see in terms of capacity for regional organizations, in terms of creating a cohesive plan and bringing a local perspective. I think we want to relook at these kind of through the lens of underserved communities, though, in terms of creating a cohesive plan for the entire region through an underserved community means that maybe they don't have staff planners or anything like that, or the expertise, and regional organizations can bring their own planning staff to help with that by providing templates and things like that through us. Again, bringing a local perspective, provide a platform for the community to share ideas and problem solve, either that's remotely or in person or whatever that might be, but just knowledge gathering and sharing is a really important aspect of all these soft costs of kind of finding the best practices as you move forward. And then another really big one is that these communities might not be able to hold trainings and things like that in terms of permitting, inspection, or planning and zoning, and bringing in the regional organization brings in more communities, and we can kind of provide the economies of scale to make this an affordable and accessible task. So in short, to reiterate, regional organizations can help remove capacity barriers for communities that would otherwise be unable to benefit from the SolSmart program. I think this is really important. We have 408 designees overall for SolSmart, and we know that the vast majority of them are at the moment well-to-do and wealthier communities, and so I think we're missing, as we move forward in the clean energy transition, a pretty sizable portion of the population nationwide, and I think our hope is that regional organizations can help us with that. So again, I kind of want to reiterate and summarize the general benefits of regional organizations is we're providing this no-cost technical assistance to you. I think the difference between SolSmart for a community and SolSmart for a regional organization is that the community gets some really hands-on work and kind of directly pinpointed to the community. As a regional organization, a lot of times you're helping your communities within your region benefit from programs like this. And I think that's a really big aspect of our ask for regional organizations, and the benefit that they see is that we provide their no-cost technical assistance to a far larger expanse when we go through the regional organization rather than directly to the community. So the technical benefits for a regional organization is you earn this nationally recognized designation if you choose to pursue bronze, silver, or gold. And you receive the national recognition for it through our website, the social media outlets. We do press and media opportunities and public events and things of that nature. You're really seeing the benefits in your region of increased solar access, and your communities are having an opportunity to engage with this as well. I will say the other side of this is SolSmart designation tends to be a really great way to kind of distinguish yourself as you apply for funding and grants as a regional organization, and as a community if you're on that front as well. Oftentimes you end up fulfilling some of the requirements, prereqs for grants, or it's a really great way to point out that you're already moving in the right direction on these things. So we can move on to the next one. Again, it's no cost technical assistance. It's not just at the regional level where we're helping your planners and staff train, but we're helping your communities internally as well, which is a really big aspect. The region becoming more competitive and opening new doors to business growth, workforce development is a really big aspect of IREC's work, and just wider economic prosperity. And then finally, you're enhancing your region's solar market. Through SolSmart, you're kind of increasing solar installers' ability to develop new projects in your communities. So the final slide, I just want to reiterate, these are kind of the 8 aspects of regional organizations that we focus on for the credits. You have an opportunity to kind of choose your own path. We have a lot of credits that focus on LMI and underserved communities now, and hopefully some of these speak to the issues that your communities are facing. Permitting, planning, and zoning are really common ones, but construction codes and solar rights are often with HOAs, and utility engagement are all these really important aspects that might be relevant right now, might be relevant later. Either way, I think they're really important to understand and move forward on with the SolSmart program. I think this is it for me. So I will, when we send this these slides out as well, there's a lot more slides I think in this deck that we can skip through right now, but it might be worthwhile checking through. So I think basically, Brett, you can skip through till the next topic.
Excellent, great. Well, Danny and Andrew, thank you so much for those presentations. Really appreciate the kind of clear and accessible introduction to SolSmart. And yeah, great reminder that the slides will be made available afterwards. You know, it's a lot of information to digest, but take your time. Also encourage you to visit the SolSmart website as well. Tons of great resources there, webinars, case studies, and much more. So don't feel overwhelmed at the moment. This is a great start. And I think really our goal for this webinar is to get the ideas going and really start a conversation. So Danny and Andrew, thank you so much for that. So now we're going to turn and talk about what this looks like in practice on the ground with a real life case study here. So I'll ask Kevin and Afi to join us up here on the stage and share a little bit more about their experience in the New River Valley Regional Commission and in Southwest Virginia, what the SolSmart process was like. So Kevin, we'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Brett. As you mentioned earlier in my introduction, I'm Kevin Bird, Executive Director of the Nero Valley Regional Commission. We're based in Radford, Virginia, and you kind of see on our slide there in southwest part of the state, and also currently have the pleasure of serving as president of NADO. I think I have the shortest remarks today, and it's really just to brag on SolSmart's resources they made available to us. When Afi first came to me and said that this is a program she was considering, I thought, you know, it's great. It had a lot of benefits to it, and said, you know, what kind of resources are available to help us navigate through? So it sounds like there's tons, and certainly there was lots of flexibility that Andrew and Danny presented earlier that truly helps the regional organizations figure out what the value add is for you and your organization and your region. So I'm going to really pass it over to Afi here, and she can talk about how we went through this process over the past year and a half.
Good afternoon. My name is Afi Fankin, and I'm with the New River Valley Regional Commission. I'm the senior planner here, and we did pursue this designation process. If you'll turn to the next slide. Okay, so how we really got started in March of 2019, SolSmart launched their regional pathway designation process for the regions, and we kind of evaluated the process, the designation process, and then had a consultation call with SolSmart. And soon after that, just to understand, you know, the process, the designation process, how much staff time and resources that we would need to put in to pursue this designation. So once we understood that it's doable, we then took it to the board to get direction. And in May of 2019, we took it to the board, and they gave us approval. And with that direction from the board, we prepared the solar statement. Basically, it's like it was mentioned before by Danny and Andrew that it is just a letter of commitment, that we will commit staff time for technical assistance to pursue this designation process. We'll move to the next slide. So the real reason, I think some of the reason that we considered this designation process is one, that there's a growing demand, solar demand, and also there's also a demand for solar-ready homes. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is the economic activity with solar development. You know, it involves a variety of trades. We have construction. When a solar development comes in, you need construction workers, you need electrical workers, you need engineers. So all these trades actually can be sourced from our community. So that economic incentive for our region is also very important to us, why we thought pursuing this designation process will be helpful. So our goal for the region is really that we want to play a key role in advancing solar in our region. The second goal that we have is we want to offer those best practices to our member local government. You know, we want them to have the best resources. And also the other thing that we want to do is we want to be house all the information and educational resources, not only for our member local government, but also for our community, our residents, our solar installers and workers in our region. So those were the reason and the goals that we have for our region. Can you please? Okay, I will skip this slide because I know Andrew and Danny have talked about it, but we'll go on to the next slide. So what we wanted to do is achieve the first level of designation, which is the bronze. And for that, like you mentioned, we need some prerequisite and we need some points to attain in order for our designation. So the first thing we did was the solar statement, which is the PR1 prerequisite 1. The second one was, again, Andrew mentioned, it is the permitting checklist. So we did that. We have to create a checklist for our region and then try to encourage our permitting staff or our member local government to adopt that permitting checklist. The great thing is that SolSmart has a template, and we just custom it a little bit to our region's need. So that was the second prerequisite that we did. And then the third one was we host a webinar for our planners, and that is as part of the planning and zoning guidance prerequisite. So we hosted a webinar for the planners. We do meet here in our region. We have a regional planning meeting, which we do quarterly. So at one of our meetings, we hosted that webinar, and SolSmart kind of connected us with the trainees. And at this webinar, I think one thing that the many things that they addressed, which was really important, is how do we incorporate solar in our land use plans, in our zoning. They talked about how we can set solar goals, how to capture the benefits of solar development, but the most important is how to minimize risk for our local government. So those were the things that we learned at that webinar. And the other thing that we did also is we host a training for permitting staff in the region. And that also, again, like, solar installations, permits are coming through nowadays. People, residents here in the region want to install. So this was training our permitting staff. What are the applicable building codes and standards? What kind of process you have to adopt, like simplified permitting process. They talked about that. And they also talk about, which is really important for these building inspectors, was what to look for when you go for inspection, for solar inspection. So this was really, really helpful for our community to learn. As you all know, we have big towns in our region, our New River Valley Regional Commission, but we also have smaller towns, which we have fewer staff. So this was very helpful knowledge. Can you please move to the next? Okay. So this is a scorecard that a Soulsmart use. It's really great because it helps us track, how as we go through the process. As we submit these activities, we submit this documentation, what we're doing, we're tracking through this process. So we submit what we're doing, and then they review it and award us point, and we go through that process. If you can move to the next slide. So other things that we have done before, which they looked at while they're doing the baseline assessment, as SolSmart did the baseline assessment, is they look at what we have done before. And the Nero, our regional commission here a few years ago, as part of the livability initiative, we created a regional energy plan. And in that plan, we address renewable energy, we address energy efficiency, and we also address enhancing energy sources like solar. So when they saw that, I think that also helped us in achieving some points towards the designation process. And just a tip, one thing is that you might not have an energy plan for your region, but just having those energy policies in your economic development plan, so SEDS, as you call it here, if you have some strategies and policies addressing solar development and solar energy, I think that also, I understand, help towards your designation process. Another thing that we do, can you just go back to the last slide a little bit? Another thing that we do here in our region too, which we offer to our member organization is local government, is we do local technical assistance, and we do the zoning ordinance rewrite, comprehensive plan updates. So as part of that process, we drafted regulation which address solar energy. Really, for the zoning part, we did ground mount solar regulations and roof mounted solar regulation. So we drafted these policies, which then the local government can easily adopt and amend their zoning ordinance, by using our draft regulation. Similarly, we also drafted policies relating to renewable energy for our land use element, economic development element, and housing element. You can go to the next slide. So that's how we attain our bronze designation, but we do want to still move forward to attain the next level of silver, we've already attained 50 points. We need another 30 points, 80 points to be a silver designee. So these are some of the things that we can actually do, which we can consider to do, which will also help us achieve that additional 30 points. One of them is a high-level feasibility analysis that we can do with the Virginia SolSmart advisors for solar PV in our brownfields, technical assistance for any community in our region which wants to, if they want to consider solar installation on a brownfield. The other things that we can do is quite easy for us because we already have, like I said, a quarterly regional planner meeting. So if we just have a standing agenda item at that meeting, and so that members can just discuss solar items, anything solar energy related. So that is also an easy way for us to achieve 10 points. And the last point that we could do is create an energy task force or solar working group with a representative from a member local government. This was really timely for us. You know, in 2020, the Virginia Clean Economy Act was passed. And with that, it's requiring that all electric utility companies expand their renewable portfolios. So really, you know, solar projects are coming to our region, will be coming. So we are preparing our member local government to be prepared for that. If the request comes in from companies or from for projects, so they know what to do, they have the goals, they know what they want and what they don't, and they know they have regulation in place. So with that, thank you so much. If you have any questions later, I can free to answer. Thank you.
All right. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for that presentation and sharing your experience. Really inspiring, particularly seeing how you're able to kind of leverage some of the initiatives and plans you had in place to really build momentum, you know, not starting from scratch, but really building off. And then, of course, not resting on your laurels, really going for silver and leveling up. So that's really exciting. This is ongoing, continuous work. So thanks for that. Great. So we've got a little bit of time for Q&A. So I'll ask Danny and Andrew to join us up here. Turn on their webcams, and had a few questions come through. And I'll try to kind of bucket these all into kind of a similar themes, but not surprising, we did get a lot of questions about time, capacity, commitment. You know, there was a question about kind of the average length for getting designated. I'm sure that probably has a lot to do with kind of where the organization is kind of starting, kind of meeting them where they are. But could any of you really talk about kind of capacity, staff, commitments, and resources? You know, as Andrew and Danny mentioned, you know, there's a strong focus on supporting underserved communities. We know capacity can be a challenge, and staff time there. So what are kind of your reflections on that, maybe for some communities or regions that might be hesitant or a little bit anxious about what lies ahead, where they can kind of get started today?
Well, I would say in terms of hesitation among communities, I think I guess the best argument is just to promote, hopefully, the great work that the SolSmart community can do and some of the great results. I think in terms of being able to show some of our third-party impacts for communities and the economic benefits of it, I think that's definitely a strong argument for the SolSmart program. At least I personally, I don't know, I take a lot of pride in it, being able to see that on-the-ground work that really contributes to you know, the economic prospects for communities. So obviously there's only so much that can be done in terms of local communities not having the capacity, you know, but in terms of being able to help communities see the benefits of SolSmart, I think that's probably the strongest pitch.
I think in terms of the time commitments and the capacity commitments and things like that, I'd be really curious to hear Kevin and Afi's perspective on this as well. But I think it very much depends on if you want to go for bronze or silver or gold, obviously, and it very much depends on where you stand initially. I can point to, we just brought on a few communities, or we're starting to work with a few communities, and we set a kind of a deadline of February, about 6 months out or so, of trying to hit the first round of designations. Obviously that changes with a lot. They might not all hit that. Some of them might hit it way before that. But we generally try to kind of come up with a pathway for you in try to set some sort of deadline kind of in that range to keep things moving if at all possible. At the end of the day, though, as well, we are very flexible, and if things come up, things like COVID and all the issues that organizations deal with, I mean, we're very flexible with the timelines.
Yeah, Afi, how many hours do you think you'd spend on that overall?
So, like we started in May, and we were hoping, if COVID didn't hit, we would have done maybe the 6 to 7 months, but because of COVID, it took a little longer. But I think it was not hard at all. I cannot I would put in maybe a few hours, a week, maybe 1 or 2 hours a week, and just it's really documenting. And as projects, again, what I was handling is what helped me to actually incorporate some of the, to meet the prerequisites. So it was also that I was working on some projects. It was not very long, really. It took me 6, 7 months, and it was really not too much time like I would say, 2 hours a week, or maybe I'm underestimating it.
Sure. But I would say from an executive director's perspective, I know our board was thrilled to see that we were making connections with another organization that had resources they could bring to the region. If questions were coming up, whether that was small, medium, or large scale solar developments that are taking place, they were glad to see us in this space. And then for us to go into this space and knowing that it's not stuff that we have to invest a lot of time into, that we have the SolSmart team that we can rely on. So I think from executive director's perspective, it's a terrific value.
Great, thanks, Kevin. I'm just checking the chat box now. It looks like Nick Kaza from NLC, who's on the project team, weighed in and said he sees around 10 to 15 hours of work to achieve bronze, really depending on where the community is starting. He said for regional organizations might take a little bit longer just because of the kind of networking coordination with local governments that needs to take place across jurisdictions. So Nick, thanks for weighing in on that front. Another question coming through, I guess this might be more towards Kevin, but also Afi as well, your experience working with elected officials. How much time is put in with kind of information sharing, or really talking about the benefits of the program? How do local elected officials, mayors, city councils kind of play into this process?
I think it's the beauty of having a regional program like this, because it's something that's new for a lot of communities. Some of our communities have been at this for a number of years. Early 2000s, been working on solar initiatives. And actually, we had worked with one of our communities to have one of the first solar ordinances in Virginia. But most of the others, this hasn't been front of mind. And then you have some citizens that are put forward some creative concepts, and they don't know really how to react to those, whether that's residential or some small commercial projects. So I think they all see it as a value add. And again, it's not something that we're paying a service for to have access to this resource. So it was all pretty welcoming from their perspective. It's been positive.
Great. Another question came through about workforce development, which I believe Andrew brought up there too. So be curious to hear from any of you kind of what that kind of fusion with workforce development is, maybe some examples you're seeing in New River Valley on how that can kind of advance skills and training and other workforce elements. So just kind of that connection.
Yeah, our community college has a solar training program, and I've been out to visit that site before. It's pretty impressive. So I know they're geared up to be training that workforce. I don't know what Andrew and Danny might have insights on that as well.
Yeah, so I think for the structure of the program, we have minimal credits, I think, that are specifically geared towards workforce development. But I think in our recent conversations with communities and organizations, it's been a consistent topic of conversation. And so I will say IREC has a pretty substantial workforce development program that they work on with vets and the job census and things like that as well. That if questions come up as you're moving forward and this is an interest of you or interest to you, we can kind of have more in-depth conversations about that, of what specifically we can kind of provide and those resources and things like that as well. I don't know if Danny has anything that he wants to add to that.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Andrew said. I think it's a good point on IREC having other work on workforce development, but I just want to mention that obviously there are credits that we look for when we're in the SolSmart program to help communities. But one of the things that we really try to do, and one of our focuses, is to make sure that we meet communities and regional organizations where they're at and help with the specific issues that they're looking for. So we don't want to come in and say, here's how you should do everything. We very much want to segue with the goals of local communities. So to that point, we're always, as part of, the designation process and the technical assistance process, we're always happy to find some extra resources that may be available and send them over and that sort of thing, or connect communities with things like other financing opportunities. Some communities may, for example, get in touch with us and say, are you familiar with any financing opportunities through your work within the state or something like that? And we'll say, we'll connect with other organizations if we don't know. And if we do know, then we send those resources over. So, even if we don't always have directly what a community is looking for within one of our specific credits, we're always happy to connect communities we're working with the resources they need.
Great. Excellent. We're coming up on the end of the hour, and I just want to give anyone who just a final kind of plug or share any final thoughts about this experience. Like I said, we really want to put this webinar on to encourage and inspire others, and also let you know that there's others out there. We saw, I think, the numbers at 9 right now for regional organizations. We want to see that kind of skyrocket, and both NADO and NARC are here to help kind of build those connections amongst the other regional organizations that are currently designated, but also that are thinking about it. I know there's some kind of internal conversations taking place already. So any kind of final thoughts, from not to put anyone on the spot, but just final reflections on kind of where to go from now and next steps.
Sure, I'd be happy to jump in there. Well, first off, I want to say thanks to everybody who took time out of their schedule to attend. I know it's crazy busy right now for everybody, so really appreciate everybody being able to join, and for everybody on on our panel up here for putting on this great webinar. But I think the one thing I would say at the end of it is that we're always available to provide resources or provide information for folks, and we're really excited about the great partnerships we have with the program and the work we've been able to do with communities. So if there's ever any topics that anyone is interested in, or if there are other communities that they've spoken with that may be interested, feel free to reach out on pretty much anything, and we're happy to help you guys and provide the information you guys need, and hopefully work toward those great designation goals that we were mentioning.
Right. So with that, a big thanks to Kevin and Afi and Andrew and Danny for taking the time, and for all of you for joining us today. As I've mentioned a couple of times, there will be that survey that pops up at the end of the screen when we close out. Please take a few minutes just to fill it out. Give us some feedback. Tell us what your challenges are, what your needs are, what you're working on, and also, most importantly, if you'd like us to reach out and connect with you to start a conversation or continue one. This is supposed to be the start of big things today. So please be in touch, and thanks again so much for joining us. As I mentioned, you'll all receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording and the slides. They'll also be posted all over the web, so you can't miss it, and please share with your partners and colleagues who couldn't join. So with that, we'll close out. Have a great rest of the day. I hope it's sunny wherever you are right now, and to enjoy that sunlight. And that was cheesy. I can't believe I said that, but go out, enjoy, and we'll be in touch. So thanks again for joining us. Be well.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.